Welcome to the Headshots Podcast with Dr. Nicole, a 1-hour conversation on mental wellness to improve your look and outlook. During the show, we will talk about a variety of topics which impact you from the inside out. Each show is designed with 3 parts: lights, camera, and action. In our lights segment, we will shed light on a topic around a mental health concern. In our camera segment, we will focus on that mental health concern, educate, and raise awareness. And in our action segment, we will give 3 steps to improve your look and your outlook. So join us for the Headshots Podcast with Dr. Nicole. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Headshots Podcast with Dr. Nicole. I'm Dr. Nicole Johnson, a licensed professional counselor, assistant professor, addiction specialist with over 20 years experience in the field of behavioral health and counseling services. I want to welcome you to my live audience and the replay audience, whether you're on Facebook or YouTube. Welcome to another episode of Headshots Podcast. So we're in our Recover Me 2021 series. And we have enjoyed just talking to our guests around this topic of recovery. First episode, we talked about I've fallen and I can't get up. The last time we met, we talked about blind spots, those things I can't see, Johari's window, and why I need a team of people, my dream team, to help me out. And so tonight we want to dig a little deeper on our walk through this recovery process. We talked about the fact that recovery does not only have to do with drugs and alcohol. The year of 2020, the pandemic that we just celebrated, a year since most of us have been locked down or not in places of work and school and social activities. And 2020 caused a lot of grief, a lot of hurt. And so tonight we want to talk about grieving, leaving, and letting go. How do we come out of 2020? How do we go through this process of healing? And so I'm excited tonight, and we're going to jump right into our light section. So I want to give some foundational definitions of what grief is, what loss is, and describe the process of letting go. And so, according to the dictionary, grief is a deep and poignant distress caused by or as if by bereavement. So, when there is a pain of grief, it's because it is deep and there's poignant distress. There is an alarm going off inside of you saying, I'm bereaving, I'm sad, I have lost something. And so, loss is the act of no longer possessing. What have you lost in 2020? I've heard a lot of stories and I have experienced some loss myself. Family, friends, to COVID 19, not to COVID 19. The loss, as we talked about in our holiday episode, the loss of the holidays as we knew it, family gatherings. There have been a lot of things that we have lost in 2020. And so while we may be burdened down and while we may be carrying the grief and the loss, how do we move forward in 2021? How do we begin to let go? Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, she created in her book On Death and Dying, a book that I remember reading when I was in my undergraduate program, the stages of grief. She said that there is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. And that when people are going through the grieving process, that these are the stages at one time or another that we can classify people's emotions and their feelings about the loss. Sometimes people are in denial. They don't believe that things have actually changed. Sometimes people get angry, angry at the person who's gone, angry at the situation, angry at God, angry at others. Sometimes there's this bargaining. Oh man, if we could just go back to 2020, if we could just rethink how to be safe, if we could have just, worn the mask, if we could have just gotten a safer in a safer position. And then sometimes there's depression. When we feel the weight of the grief, when we feel the weight of the situation that we have just gone through or the loss that we've experienced, it can cause us to go into a depression, a longing for things to change. But as we go through this process, and this is what I'm hoping for all of you watching this video, I'm hoping that you will get to a place of acceptance. That as we talk tonight with our guests, you will be able to find some help to begin to accept what has happened, help to know that it's not easy, but help to know that you can begin to move forward in your walk of recovery. This season, we're talking about recovery, recover me. Some of you are under the despair of grief and you feel like you're lost in the sadness. This episode tonight is to help you to begin the process of healing and recovery. How can we get from under the grief? How can we begin to peel back the layers of grief, the layers of loss, and let it go so that I can recover myself, that I can recover me as I am walking this walk of recovery? And even on last episode, we talked about the fact that even though you're in recovery and you're recovering me, that you may discover you in this process. So some of our listening audience, and we hope you're here tonight, shout us out, put your comments and questions in as we go in. Somebody asked me and said, Dr. Nicole, can you please put it on the shirt? Recovery, recover me, discover me. They said, I would definitely buy it because that's what this recovery process is about. And so tonight, I have some wonderful friends of mine that are coming back, and one is coming for the first time to the Headshots podcast to talk about this topic of grieving, leaving, and letting go. So I want to bring back Elder John. He is he's been here last week with us, Elder John Hale. I appreciate him coming back. So he's going to come on with us tonight. and help facilitate this conversation. Elder John, how you doing?
Hello, Dr. Johnson. Thank you for having me back. It's a wonderful pleasure here, and thank you everyone out there. Bless you.
So John is going to help us with this discussion. And tonight, I want to bring on a dear friend and colleague, Dr. Angelie Richardson. She's a licensed professional counselor, assistant professor, couple and family therapist. I love Angel because she has such a unique ministry in counseling. She specializes in adoption, foster care, grief, and trauma. Anything you need, Angel is here. Thank you, Dr. Angel, for being with us
Oh,
tonight.
thank you, Dr. Nicole. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. And Elder John, it's great to be with you again as well. So thank you both. I'm really excited to be with both of you. Thank you.
Good. So we are going to jump right in. So tonight's topic is grieving, leaving, and letting go. There's so much that happened in 2020. So much pain, and a lot of times when people talk about grief and loss, they stay stuck on people dying. And
Mhm.
so I want to start talking, Dr. Angel and John, Elder John, about how can people walk through the process of grief, loss, and letting go. And so we're moving into our camera section. This is a section where we really dive in and focus on this topic because so much has happened in 2020. So Dr. Angel, Elder John, I'm gonna open the floor. Dr. Angel, share the various ways that people can experience loss. Sometimes people are confused. They think that
Yeah,
loss
yeah,
only has to do with people dying. So talk a
yeah,
little bit
yeah,
about the various ways that people can experience loss tonight.
yeah. Dr. Nicole, there are so many ways that we experience loss, right? I think in
Mhm,
2020 has really shown us all the ways.
mhm,
Of course, we have people who die, and that is a substantial loss. But you can lose your job, you can lose your house, you can lose friends, relationships break up, whether it's a friendship, whether it's a romantic relationship. We've had the loss of being able to be connected because we couldn't go to church. We've had the
mhm,
loss of relationships because we weren't able to be in schools together. So all
mhm,
of these kinds of losses are so significant. And I think part of what has happened often is we've also lost the rituals. So when someone has died, we haven't been able to do our ritual of a funeral or of either even getting together to be able to
mhm,
do the repast,
mhm.
right? So we've not only lost the person or the connection, we've also lost our rituals, which is significant as well. So there's all these different ways that we can experience loss,
Mhm.
and we haven't been able to honor or talk about those losses that we've had.
Right. So I really like that because like the three of us, we frequent the same places and we work together in some capacity. And just not even being around able to touch one another
Yeah.
or
Yeah,
eat lunch together or
yeah.
see one another's face to face. We're looking at Zoom has been a very significant loss. And I think that when we you talked about the different areas of loss, the different types of loss, why do you think people don't recognize them?
I think a lot of it is we're conditioned to look at loss one way, right? So
Mhm,
you think about it like if someone dies, traditionally there was a ritual for that, right? So
mhm,
if someone dies, we have a funeral, we have this ritual, we talk about that. Even historically, other kinds of losses, we don't have a ritual. I work in adoption and foster care. We don't necessarily talk about the loss that goes into being separated from your family in certain ways. We don't necessarily
mhm,
talk if somebody goes to jail. Do we talk about that loss from your family?
Certainly.
When we have those, for those of us who are in the faith community, if someone leaves the church or if you leave the church, do you talk about that loss? Do you talk about what that feels like to be
mhm,
disconnected from your faith community? So I think we've been conditioned that there's types of loss you talk about and there's types of loss that you just deal with on your own. And now we're in this space where all these losses are coming up. And
Mhm.
oh my goodness, I'm feeling this, and I've never been taught how to talk about it or how
Mhm.
to deal with it. And so
Mhm.
now I'm in this space where it's hitting me, and what am I supposed to do?
And that is so powerful. And John,
Very
being a
well said.
man, being a man, how do men really deal with losses?
Hmm.
Dr. Angel, women may come together, we may talk,
Right.
but how do men deal with losses and
Hmm.
grief?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty sure that there's definitely some differences in terms of the gender,
Mhm.
because from my experience anyway, us men, the majority of us, basically deal with grief, loss, or any situation in our thoughts. We don't
Right.
necessarily bring them out in words.
Mhm.
So we spend a lot of time in our headspace. So you might see, behaviors like isolation,
Mhm.
or quietness, or short temperedness that might come out.
Mhm.
Um, or preoccupation, like working a lot. So you might see it in those aspects, but we spend a lot of time thinking.
Mhm.
Um, and that's how we basically deal with it, is through the process. We don't normally talk about it. But Dr.
Mhm.
Angel mentioned something that was so very important for whichever gender that is, and that is the fact that getting in touch with how we are uh, interconnected and
Mhm.
interdependent. I
Mhm.
think
Yes.
the 2020 really shedded a light on that. She really talked about
Hmm.
historically how we don't even view losses as losses. Certain things we
Right.
might even
Right.
level them.
Right.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
Yeah.
sometimes we do level them. But the
Mhm.
definition that
Hmm.
you gave about a loss of no longer having that possession, and
Mhm.
and and that possession could be the possession of relationship, the possession
Yes.
of connectedness, but somehow we are self-taught that maybe that disconnect is not even worthy to look
Mm.
into, or not even worthy to discuss or share with people. But what we also
Hmm.
don't realize, sometimes we may not realize, is that it has a deeper effect than we really thought.
Mhm.
And
Mm.
then we try to move on a little bit too fast. So
Hmm.
I think that when you're talking about grieving, um, it's really it's really important that you allow yourself to actually feel
Mhm.
what you're feeling,
Hmm.
Mhm.
and
Hmm.
find a way to discuss. Now, for us men, like I said before, normally we do not discuss it. It's usually worked out some physical kind of way, either through, I'll be honest, either through some kind of physical way, all right?
Mhm.
Hmm.
However you
Hmm.
want it, some
Hmm.
kind of physical way. It's
Right.
usually worked out that way, exercise, jogging, you can go with those as well.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
but for the most part, we don't talk about those situations.
Yeah.
And even if you
Mhm.
connect it to death, traditionally, how are your family makeup? So when you
Yeah.
lose certain things, sometimes for some particular family members, it's like we don't ever want to talk about it. We don't want to bring
Mhm.
it up in front of other
Right.
people because we
Right.
don't want them to
Hmm.
feel a certain way.
Right.
So I don't want to talk too much. It's just that you really awakened
Hmm.
something in me, Dr. Angel, when
Yeah.
you talked about that interconnectedness and
Yeah.
And I
interdependence.
saw the comment from Dr. Mo, one of our other colleagues,
Yeah.
talking about disenfranchised loss. So we
Yes.
feel disconnected, like
Yeah.
we are not in this circle anymore. We're
Hmm.
pulled out because of loss. And John, you started bringing things out, and I want to delve into this a little bit more. So, what are some of the emotions, Dr. Angel, that are
Hmm.
associated with grief? So,
Mm.
what
Yeah.
John brought out some that were related to men, but what are
Hmm.
some other emotions that are attached to grief that people
Yeah.
can say, I'm hearing this and I'm noticing this in myself?
Right. Well, I think, we often can feel irritated, right? We can feel
Mm.
frustrated. We can feel anger, and some of these things, Dr. Nicole, are things that you brought up. But I think we often sometimes can feel shame. We can feel guilt.
Oh,
We can
wow.
feel these other things. And we don't recognize sometimes that, wait, this is part of my grief coming up, feeling
Hmm.
this shame around, wait, was I good enough with this person? Did I treat them correctly? Or
Wow.
did I cause this situation? Right?
Hmm.
Do I feel guilty about some of the things that maybe were in my control or maybe were out of my control
Hmm.
that led to this situation, right?
Hmm.
Um, and also my interactions with some of the people. But then we get irritable, we get frustrated, we get angry, we feel all these other things because sometimes there are spaces that are or things that are out of our control that we can't
Yes.
manage, right? And so
Yeah.
these things that,
Yeah.
wait, I don't have control. What do you mean I don't have control? And so
Oh wow.
really recognizing that
Hmm.
I now want to do everything I can to regain control. And when I can't, how much does that feed my frustration? How much does
Hmm.
that feed my
Hmm.
anger? How much does that feed
Hmm.
my irritability? And all of these things. And I think a lot of times we can identify with the sadness, right? Because
Hmm.
I
Right.
lost something, I feel sad. But these other things, wait, I don't want to tie that to my grief,
Hmm.
or I'm not able to tie that to my grief.
Dr. Angel, you
Wow.
brought up something very powerful when you talked about the shame and the guilt. Because one of the areas that you mentioned is like the loss of employment or the loss of income.
Mhm,
And
mhm,
2020 with that financial loss caused a lot of people to go into guilt and shame because I didn't save.
yeah,
I didn't budget properly.
yeah,
And so
yeah.
now I'm sitting with this grief of look at my situation. From day to
Mhm,
day, I don't know where our next meal is coming from.
Hmm.
I
right.
the shame of now I have to go and get food. I don't have food. I don't
Yeah,
have my needs met. And
yeah.
while grief is, we can't necessarily avoid it. It's a part of
Mm-mm.
life.
Mhm,
And it is an opportunity to reflect, and that's what we're talking about. How can we use this period of grief and loss to start the reflection process so that we
yeah,
can
Mm.
let go? So that
yeah,
we can, and when
yeah,
I mean by let go, I'm not talking about letting go of the love or letting go of the good things, letting go of the things that are important, but I'm talking about letting go of this burden.
yeah,
Sometimes sometimes when you talk about the guilt and the shame, a burden that
mhm,
may not necessarily been something I could avoid at this period
right,
of time. So
right.
how do we start the process of letting go? And I want you to talk about people. Start right there. How do we start the process? Start right there. I got so much in my
So
head. Just go ahead.
my thing, and you'll probably hear me to say this every time you hear me talk, is we have to give ourselves grace. And I know that's
Mhm,
not the easiest thing. I know it's hard,
mhm,
but the first place we have to start with is grace. Often we're good at giving grace to other people, right?
mhm,
You
mhm,
did the best you could, but we have to start with ourselves.
mhm,
You did the best you could with what you knew at the time. You
Yes.
did not know you were going to go into a pandemic,
right.
right? You did not know you were going to lose your job. And
Mhm,
so, if you had known, if you had foresight, you probably would have done things differently, but you
mhm,
didn't know.
mhm,
So, the first thing you need to do is give yourself grace. You did the best you could with what you had and what you knew. And so, if you can start with grace, can you let go of guilt? Let go of the shame? Can you let go of what could have been, what should have been, what would have been? Because that's not serving you. So, can we let
mhm,
go of what's not serving us
mhm,
and give ourselves some grace so that we can move forward? Because sitting in all of this other stuff, it's not serving you in any way. And it's
mhm.
not helping you move forward into
Right.
what you need to get to do better and live better moving forward.
But let's be honest, John and
Yeah.
Jill, it's hard for us to give ourselves grace.
Oh,
I mean,
absolutely.
we're clinicians and we're always telling our clients self-care, but it's hard for us to take care of ourselves. Give grace, but be patient. All of these things that we, preach to others or even desire for others.
Yeah.
John, why is it so
Well,
hard for us to give ourselves grace?
well, I'm still a little bit in awe here, um, because you're absolutely wonderfully said that we need to give ourselves grace. Um, and I'm telling you, that is so powerful only because of the
Mhm,
fact that we have to get to the point of the do now.
mhm,
And that's true, and
Mhm.
I think that it is
mhm,
healthy to have that reflection as to how did I
mhm,
get here, but
mhm,
more importantly, in most cases we may not be totally responsible for where we are at.
Right.
There are
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
circumstances or other people may have made contributions.
Hmm.
But the thing about it is we will be responsible if we stay there.
Hmm.
So
Mm,
now,
Yes.
so
that's
so
good.
so that's what brought me to the do now, and a part of that is giving yourself grace.
Hmm.
I'll be honest with you, Dr. Johnson. I think the core key in what you just said about whether it's a clinician or giving advice, I think the key has to be humility,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and
Yes.
being realistic, because
Hmm.
we're not superhuman. And the
We not,
same,
John.
no, evidently we're not. No, but when she said give us grace, right? Then what is basically saying is turn that thing around on yourself. The
Hmm.
same thing that you would be
Mm,
giving to others, give it to yourself.
Hmm.
That's what I hear you saying, Doctor Angel, is
mhm,
that we need to learn
mhm.
how to give all of this um, expertise back to ourselves. So
Hmm.
we
Mhm.
actually have to become, if you will, our primary client.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
Yep.
when you say that, that's why I said it really takes humility, because then you're kind of flipping the roles,
Hmm.
Mm,
and now you are the
mhm,
recipient of all the great things of you,
Hmm.
mhm,
and for you not to receive that, it's, to
mhm.
me, it's really like, I don't think that we can effectively give without
Yeah.
giving ourselves. I don't
Yes.
think we
Yeah.
can effectively do that. Not only will we burn out, but at the same token is, how could we be giving out something good and not eat it ourselves?
Mm.
Oh,
Oh,
John.
Elder John, you
You
just said
know,
a word.
Yep.
right? So think about who could be watching. We could have
Right.
parents that are trying to do their best for their children but neglecting
Mhm.
themselves. We may have
Yes.
individuals that work in different arenas that are trying to do the best
Mhm.
job for others but neglect themselves. We have
Yeah.
faith
Yeah.
leaders
Yeah.
that will
Yes.
sacrifice their own well-being and their wellness, because Jesus sacrificed his life. We're coming up to
Mhm.
Palm Sunday, we sacrifice our lives,
Mhm.
but then we have to take into consideration, what about us?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
let's talk about the fact that, do people actually get stuck in this grieving process? Do they
Yeah.
get stuck in a place where they're helping others but they themselves are drowning?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think so.
Oh, it's good.
I think one of the things to recognize is that grief is a process. Grief
Mm,
is a journey. It's not a destination, right? So
Mhm.
I think part of this idea of getting stuck is we have to remember that when you've lost something, especially if you've lost someone, that they're gone or that thing is gone. And so you're going to miss them, and it's okay to miss them. But we can't get stuck in this place of it being a placeholder. This needs to be something that happened to me. It can't be
Mhm.
something that defines me. And if I
Right.
make it something that defines me,
mm,
that's where I get stuck. If
Yes.
it's something that happened to me, then I can miss it, I can mourn it, I can grieve it, and I can
Hmm.
learn how to walk with this thing and
Hmm.
be continue to evolve, right? With
Hmm.
I miss this thing, I'm sad about it, I've learned how to operate. But if it defines me, then I become this is this thing who I am. And so that's that space that we have to recognize, is this going to be what defines me, or is this going to be something that happened to me? And we really do have to make that decision.
And
that's wonderfully
Dr.
said.
Angel, yeah, absolutely wonderful. And I started thinking about one of my favorite Bible stories when I think about grief, Naomi, who lost her
Mm,
husband,
hmm. Hmm.
lost her
Hmm.
children, and
Yes.
lost her sons. Let me be defined.
Yes.
Lost her children,
Yes.
lost her sons, which
Hmm.
led to financial stress, which led
Yes.
to her losing her financial stability, losing her home,
Hmm.
and having to return to her family's house. And when
Yeah.
she got there and on her journey, she was like, don't call me Naomi. Don't call me my
Mm-mm.
name. Call me Mara, meaning the
Yeah.
Lord has dealt bitterly with me. Like you're saying, she got to a place where her grief, she started
Hmm.
identifying herself. She
As
lost
that.
who she was in her grief.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
I always use that when I talk to people about grief, because it's just a powerful testament that
Yeah.
this loss happened. We can't
Yep.
take it back.
Right.
It did happen, but there is a person behind the grief. So I'm
Yes.
talking to
Yes.
everybody out there. You may have lost immensely, in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a put your name in that line
Yes.
behind your
Mm-hmm.
grief. There is
Mm-hmm.
a Nicole behind that loss. There is a John behind that burden.
Mm-hmm.
There is an
Mm-hmm.
Angel behind that
Mm-hmm.
fear of moving forward or letting go.
Mm-hmm.
So there is
Mm-hmm.
someone underneath this immense pain, like it said, this poignant distress. There is a person in there, and we're trying to help you recover, not just go through the
Ah.
recovery process, but to recover me. How can you we bring
Mm-hmm.
you out from behind
Yes.
the curtain of grief? How can we
Yes.
bring you from behind the curtain of this loss? And so how do we honor it? How do we honor the loss but let go
Mm-hmm.
of the pain? How do we
Yeah.
honor the loss but let go of the pain that is causing me to be behind this curtain of grief?
Wow, Dr. Johnson
Mm-hmm.
and Dr. Angel, this is really good. You're using words that are so interchangeably. I hear you saying me, and then I hear you
Mhm.
saying we. And I
We, all
would like
right,
for the
John.
audience to really understand that the power in that is that in order to recover me, it does take a we.
Takes away. Yes.
So this is where we talked about the dream team, and I just want people to know that self-examination is necessary.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
But from that self-examination is where we start making sure that we're utilizing our team. Make
Yes.
sure that we are reaching out or allowing other people to support us through this process. We have been divinely intertwined purposely to interconnect and be interdependent.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
so this stuff that we're talking about right now is for us to have a foundation to be able to give to other people so that they can
Mm-hmm.
help us along the way.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that you guys were saying about the process, it reminds me of allowing myself to not be in denial. Denial means that let me just acknowledge the fact that I am afraid.
Yes. Yes.
If I can acknowledge the fact that I am afraid, if I can acknowledge the fact that I'm hurt, if I can acknowledge the fact that I'm frustrated, let's
Mm-hmm.
have a
Yes.
face to face truth first,
Yes.
Mm.
you
Yes.
know, and from that truth allows me to be in a state to say this is what I can do and this is what I need
Mm-hmm.
help with.
Yes.
Yes.
And I
Yes.
think that's very important is because we're so interconnected and we because you have different strengths, it allows you to do what you can do and then reach out for what the support that you need. So when you're
Mm-hmm.
talking
Mm-hmm.
about being a process, there
Mm-hmm.
is a process that is going to evolve you, but then there's a
Mm-hmm.
process that's going to include others. And I think that that's
Oh
very
yeah.
important that through this particular journey that piece is not neglected. And that's
Mm-hmm.
what it
Mm-hmm.
goes back to when you're talking about when I
Mm-hmm.
said we're not superhuman. Of course we're not.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't matter whether you're a counselor or you're a mom.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
That
Yes.
overwhelming sense of responsibility
Yes.
can make it seem as if you have to do this
Yes.
all alone.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's where I think when we get divided in that aspect is where
Mm-hmm.
we begin to not get everything we need, the
Mm-hmm.
nutrients from other people that we can't
Mm-hmm.
give to
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. We can't give
Yes.
everything to
Absolutely.
ourselves.
Right.
Newsflash, we can't.
Can't
You
do it
know.
Not at
alone.
all.
So
Right.
we have to realize what is missing. And
Mm-hmm.
then we need others like yourselves to tell us, well, where can we go to get that? Because I hear you
Mm-hmm.
guys saying all of this. Okay, but now where do I go and get that at?
Mm-hmm.
So, and
Mm-hmm.
then
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Elgin
Mm-hmm.
said it's a process. We will
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
help you. People are out there to help you through this process.
Yes.
So I just like the way that you all said that, but fear kept popping up too. For
Yeah.
when you was talking about for us as men, when we get afraid, we may not acknowledge it
Mm-hmm.
like that. So it's usually anger that comes out, fear and
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
anger based.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's okay because when you're afraid because you lost that control and now you feel
Ah.
helpless and now you feel
Mm.
that
Mm.
desperation, you feel that despair,
Right.
Yes.
and then this is when we
Right.
start doing just about anything to replace that void
Mm-hmm.
because remember it was a loss of
Mm.
possession. I
Right.
no
Right.
longer have that possession now. So we can't we have to be honest that something does need to replace that.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when it
Yes.
comes to people, obviously no one can ever replace another person,
Right.
but
Right.
we need to replace the absence of that interconnectedness. that Dr.
Yes,
Angel was
John.
talking about
I like that.
before. It has
Yes.
to be replaced.
Yeah.
There's a void, and
Mhm.
we have
Yes.
to fill that void. But
Yes.
then how do we
Mhm.
fill that void respectfully without dishonoring the person or thing that was already there? A lot of
Mhm.
times people
Absolutely.
won't move on and get that replacement because it may feel like I'm replacing someone that I lost rather than
Yeah.
replacing the connection that was lost.
Right.
Mm.
Right.
Mm. That's good. That's good. Elder John, there's something you said that really touched me in this being able to speak to what is missing, right? Being able to speak to the pain, being able to speak to the hurt. And I think there's this way, especially those of us who were raised in the church, we're
Mm.
told, like, we have to be careful what we say, right? By the words of your mouth, right? And so sometimes people are cautious to admit what they're feeling, right?
Okay.
Because
Mhm.
if I name it, then I'm claiming it, right? So if
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes.
say I'm hurt,
Mhm.
claimed it. If I speak this thing, then it's going to be me. And I
Come
think we
on.
really have to be able to say,
Mhm.
no, if you name this and you're honest about it, you can address it. You can
Yes.
say that
Yes.
you're hurting
Yes.
and then you can get help for it. You can say
Yeah.
that you're anxious and then you can speak the word to it, but you can't address it if you
Right.
don't speak to it. And I think we really have to work with people, especially those who are raised within faith communities, that you still have to be honest about what's going on with you if you want to address this, especially
Wow.
when
Mhm.
we're talking about grief and pain and those kinds of things. And I think we have a lot of people who were raised in this space of you can't talk about these things because
Right.
naming them and speaking them out loud is going to pull
Right.
them into your life. But by pushing it down, you're not helping yourself in any way.
Right. So
Wow. Very well
basically,
said. Yep.
that's powerful. Not saying
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay when I'm not okay. Because
Right,
if you're not okay, you're not okay. It's
right,
not lying. It's lying to say I'm okay when I'm not. It's not,
exactly.
speaking against yourself. I'm just honestly declaring where I am so that I can get help. Like
Amen.
Yeah,
Naomi was like, right now I'm bitter. I
right.
feel this bitterness. I feel this grief. I feel this anger. I'm going through these motions. I'm past denial because now I'm on my way back home. I'm angry about this loss.
Mhm.
You
Yeah,
mean they furloughed me for 6 months and then they called people back or they called us back and told us we no longer have a job? I'm
right.
angry. I gave that company 30 years of my
Hmm.
life.
Right.
When the
Yeah.
times when I wanted to leave, I didn't leave because I'm
Hmm.
loyal, or I felt
Yeah.
stuck. I couldn't leave. And now this is
Hmm.
what you do to me. But I
Yes.
can't tell people that because people will
Right.
say, well, you understand it's the pandemic. But
Hmm.
even when people lose loved ones, it may be difficult. Okay. And Valerie is saying, very true, Valerie. We will never get beyond the grief if we don't face
Hmm.
it. And
Hmm.
when we're talking about getting beyond the grief, we are not talking about forgetting the person or forgetting the
Not
No.
at all.
time or forgetting the moment
Mm-mm.
or, like Elder John said, forgetting the relationship. What we're talking
Mm-mm.
about is releasing the pain and holding to
Hmm.
the good memory. Because if I
Yes.
carry
Hmm.
that pain, it's going to impact my mind, my mental wellness. It's going to impact my motivation. It's going to impact my ability to move. It's going to slow me down and eventually it'll zap my energy. And so
Yep.
I need to honor the loss, honor what was there, but I need to let go of the pain. That's
Yes.
difficult.
Yes.
That's
Hmm.
not automatic. And I feel that a lot of us, and we've had times of pain and loss in our lives, that
Hmm.
it's easier said than done, but it's not
Yes.
impossible.
Yes.
This time that we're talking about of reflection,
Mm-hmm.
John, I'm with you. I can't do this by myself.
Mm-hmm.
I
Hmm.
cannot release
Hmm.
this pain by myself
Yeah.
because it's a blanket now, Elder
Yeah.
John and Dr. Angel.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
Hmm.
blanket. I've been
Hmm.
inside for a year.
Yes.
I remember when we had first lost the ability to go to work.
Hmm.
We were in and we lost the ability to go outside. I
Hmm.
remember that it was about 3 weeks straight, literally, that I didn't even go to the front door.
Yeah.
And it just hit
Yeah.
me all of a sudden one day. I haven't been to the front door of my house and looked outside and breathed outside air for three
Mm-hmm.
weeks straight. And
Mm-hmm.
we are creatures of habit. And so we can get into this place of life with this burden of grief and not even have an expectation that things can
Absolutely.
get better, that there
Yeah.
Absolutely.
is a forward movement that we can make.
Yes.
So, what are some steps? We're talking to our crowd, and I'm sure that people are starting to connect with what we're saying. They're connecting
Yeah.
with what we're saying, but we don't want to leave with a connection. We want to
Yeah.
leave with some answers.
Hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do you
Yeah.
guys
Yeah.
think about things people can do to start moving forward?
I think one of the first things people need to do is really admit where they are,
Yeah.
right? We can't do
Mhm,
anything until we
mhm,
face and admit where are we. So where are you right now? What is going on for
mhm,
you? You know, like Elder John said, do some honest reflection
Yeah.
and
mhm,
admit where you are right now. And it might be
mhm.
scary, it might be hard, but
Yes.
unless you take that first step of
Yep.
looking at where am I right now? What
Mhm,
am I feeling? What have I lost? Where am I right now? You can't do
mhm,
anything else.
mhm.
Yeah. I
So the
totally
first,
agree. I,
yeah.
I totally agree that that has to be the first step is that level of acceptance
Mhm.
and acknowledgement. Like you were saying, it has to be a perspective shift.
Yes,
We
John.
and
Yeah.
even in the faith community, we can't deny reality. We do
Yeah.
defy it because that's where faith
Hmm.
comes in. At. But you don't
Yes.
deny it.
Yes.
You
Mhm,
cannot ignore
Yeah.
what's actually there. And I
mhm,
just like the way
Hmm.
that you said that is because once you're honest with something, then you can deal with it. You can face it.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm,
And I think that's one of the most important steps is we really can't move forward without
mhm,
acknowledgement. And
mhm,
sometimes acceptance doesn't mean condonement.
mhm.
Mm-mm.
That's
Acceptance
right.
means yeah. So when you
Mm-mm.
accept something, you accept it as the reality, and then you can move forward from that piece. So I think that without acknowledging that first piece, without some level of acknowledgement
So,
and
so what?
acceptance,
So, John,
then
but
and we can't move.
that Dr.
Yeah.
John, I mean, Dr. John, woo, Dr.
Come
John,
on, Dr. John.
Angel. What if I don't want to leave my grief yet? What if I wanted to sit in it? Is there a time period? I mean, is it wrong if I'm not ready? I mean, I lost a lot in 2020.
And,
I'm right
mhm.
here. And every time I think
Hmm.
about trying to rebuild, it's overwhelming. What if I
But
don't
I
want
think
to?
that's a part of the acknowledgement, right?
Yes,
Like
Mhm,
I'm I'm not ready to move on. I'm not ready to move forward.
that's right.
I lost a lot. This hurts, right?
Yes.
Okay. That's where you are,
mhm,
right? That is where you are.
mhm.
And this is not going to be forever. And I think that's part of it is
Yes.
recognizing this isn't going to be forever. I when I'm working with people, especially people who have lost a spouse, you were with that person for how many years? You're not going to now all of a sudden be like, okay, I'm fine a year later. No,
Mhm,
it
Mm.
takes time. You are
mhm,
going to sit in this space for a while. Now, over time, you will learn how to manage better. You're always going to love that person. You're always going to miss
mhm,
this person. So,
mhm,
to expect that 3 months into 2021, you're going to be like, you know what? I'm ready to move forward. That's unrealistic. And I think we need to sit with our expectations. I think there's
Good.
also this space of being able to say, I'm not going to sit in this, even though I don't feel great here. But I think we also have to work on our expectations of okay, 3 months into 2021, you should feel a lot better about 2020.
hmm And I think that people came into this year, we talked about it in one of our other episodes, that people thought that, I mean, I heard people across the internet, across TV saying, oh, I just can't wait till New Year's Eve. Because soon, oh, 2020, everything is better. Every 2020 is behind me. It's gone. It's disappeared. And 2021 hit and people were feeling the same way. And they
Mm-hmm.
technically set themselves up for a deeper burden, because
Right.
like we know that things can happen instantaneously. There's times where
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
things move very
Absolutely.
quick, but there are other things that you will walk through. And
Mm-hmm.
being able to understand the difference and be able to honor the differences
Yeah,
is
that's
how we can begin
Yes.
yeah.
to get
Yes.
our healing. No one is saying that some pains of 2020 you will not feel until you get into another situation, which may
That's
not
so
even
true.
happen for 5 years. You may
Mm-hmm.
have a situation 5 years from now, and 2020 will come back to your mind. And
Mm-hmm.
we have to understand that this is a process.
Yes.
And like you said,
Mm-hmm.
acknowledgement. So you cannot recover from anything without acknowledging that you need recovery.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't need recovery, then you won't start to recover because you're
Mm-mm.
good. And so
Mm-hmm.
I appreciate what you all are saying, because we came into 2021, and a lot of times we may feel like I can't acknowledge the pain. I can't
Yeah.
admit that I'm still hurting.
Yeah.
But if we can get together and say, you know what, there's some areas of 2020 that I did leave. Some things that
Yeah.
happened that I said, click, click, it's gone. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
But then I
Mm-hmm.
have to admit that there are some things that I am still walking through.
Yeah.
And in this recovery process, it's okay to walk
Yeah.
through. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
run. You don't have to jump, skip, hop, leap. Okay. There's some things you will have successes where you will leap over like
Mm-hmm.
Superman over the
Yeah.
tall building. But then
Yeah.
there's some things, some wildernesses, and for some of you, this grief experience, this loss, is just a wilderness
Mm-hmm.
season that you just have to walk through.
Yes.
You
And
know what?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Yeah.
No, I was going to say I'm glad you're saying walk through, because
Mm-hmm.
I walk through this scenario with my mom all the time because of the
Mm-hmm.
grief and the loss, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I might get a
Mm-hmm.
phone call because of the memories and things of that
Mm-hmm.
nature. And you're
Mm-hmm.
exactly right,
Yeah.
walking through. And what we've noticed and discovered is that we have to walk through the pain to get to the joy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm.
and
Mm-hmm.
and and a lot of
Mm-hmm.
times we want to avoid the pain,
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
but
Yeah.
you have to embrace it in order to get to what you're looking for, which is the joy. So in other words,
Mm-hmm.
when I feel the pain, I try to disengage from the memory.
Mm-hmm.
But if I disengage
Mm.
from the memory, I don't get to feel the joy of that memory.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Right.
So
Yes.
Right.
I walk with my mom through the pain so that she can get to the joy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
what
Yes.
generally happens is the pain never goes away, but
Mm-hmm.
the intensity gets shorter and she gets to the joy quicker.
I like
Yes.
that, John. I
But
like
Yes.
that.
sometimes when we feel
Yes.
the
That's
pain,
good.
we run away from it.
You
That's
run
just
away
like
from the
they tell
Right.
pain.
you in physical therapy. If you twist your ankle or break your ankle or your leg, they have you, and sometimes we hate those occupational therapists because they'll make you walk on that hurt ankle. And you're like, but it's hurting, it's
Mm-hmm.
hurting. But because they know as you get through that pain, you're going to get to the healing piece where the pain is no longer there in the
Mhm.
intensity in which you feel it now. So
Yeah.
sometimes we get angry because people are pushing us to hurt,
Mhm.
but you have to
Mm.
feel that hurt and walk through it
Mm-hmm.
in order to get to the other side, which is joy. So
Mm-hmm.
these things that
Wow.
we're talking about right now that we're walking
Yeah.
through,
Yeah.
that's courageous.
Yes.
And
Yes.
a part of honoring that feeling is embracing the pain
Mhm.
to get to the
Mhm.
joy.
And so we talked about denial. We talked about, being honest to where we are, walking through, acknowledging the pain, feeling the pain. But before I go into our action steps, I just have one more question. How do I use my friends and my family? How do I use others to help me move through the pain? What can I ask them to do for me, Dr. Angel, to help me move through this grief, this pain, this loss? How can I use my family to help me let go of the pain?
I think one of the things is to have our family, excuse me, recognize that we all go through this differently, right? So how you grieve may be different than how I grieve. My process is going to be different than your process, right? So to not expect me to get through it in a certain amount of time, to not expect me to do it the way you did it, but to really support me and be there for me because we do need our community. So
Mhm.
I need you, you need me, right? I don't want to do the Barney song, but you know, but are a family, we are a community, and especially in the time where we have been divided and separated, it's really important that we stay together and stay connected. So I have a couple of friends that we have a group chat. And it's really funny that like and I do believe it's the Lord leading us, we literally just will pop up and chat like, hey girls, I'm checking on you. And everybody's like, I really needed this today, right? But really to have the people that you can connect with and check on and really, hey, if you need me, talk to me. If I need you, I'm going to talk to you. So to really be in this space and really to give each other grace, to really be in the space of a non-judgmental space,
Mhm.
but to really recognize everybody is going through this in a different way, but we're all going through this. So how can we support each other, be non-judgmental, really be in the space of you may need to cry today, and it's
Yeah.
okay. You may be somebody who doesn't cry, and that's okay. But can we
Mhm.
honor how everybody is grieving and how everybody is dealing with things? And really, that grace that I was talking about earlier, that we were talking about earlier, can we, one, yes, give it to ourselves, but also give it to other people who may be dealing with these things in a different kind of way?
I
Wow.
so appreciate that what you're saying. And we're going to move into our action steps because we basically have given them, you know. And the first action step, I always wanted to talk, always give three action steps to round up our time. And how can we let go in three steps? How can we let go in three steps? The first thing I heard everybody talking about tonight is honor the loss. The first step to letting go of the pain of 2020, the grief, the loss, and to move into letting go is to honor the loss. Celebrate the things, the people, the moments, the rituals, like you talked about, Dr. Angel, the things in our community. Honor the things and the people that you've lost in 2020. Celebrate it. Celebrate. We have been robbed of those rituals to celebrate the lives of loved ones and families and friends. But be creative. Create your own moment of celebration. You might not have been able to get to the funeral. Create a funny video if you have pictures. Create a moment where you're able to honor the loss because that's the first step of letting go. Because when you honor the loss, you're acknowledging the loss. You're
Mhm.
saying there were some things in 2020 that I lost. I don't know if they're coming back. I don't know if I'm going to have them again, but I know I lost them in 2020.
Yeah.
The next thing we can do is honor the present. You all said it. You may have lost things in 2020, but where are you to do now?
Yeah.
John, you remind me of school, sitting in school with my
To do
clients.
now.
The
Yeah.
do now. Celebrate where you are today and be grateful you still have life. I know you're bearing the pain of lives that have been lost, but I want you to celebrate the breath and the life that you have because
Mhm.
those lives are over. And that sounds, and I almost got choked up when I said it, but your life is still moving. Your life is still here. And so when we talk a lot about recovery, there is a grieving process in the recovery process because I'm grieving the person that I was. And I might not have wanted this change. I might not have
Hmm.
wanted to have to look for a new job or live in a new place or get a new friend like you talked about or think about a new spouse or a new relationship. I might not have wanted that. But how can I honor the present and celebrate where I am today and be grateful that I still have life? And then this is the scary part, but this is also the exciting part. How can I honor the future?
Mhm.
How can I say,
Yes.
wow, there are new experiences out there and
Mhm.
there is something tomorrow? And I need to be open.
Mm.
I need to be open to the
Yes.
fact that even though 2020 caused me to lose things, there is an opportunity to gain and to regain. And I'm not saying that everything I lost in 2020, I want to regain it.
Right.
So maybe I'm going to be the person that I'm going to gain some new things. Or maybe I'm the person that in 2020, I am going to regain some things that I lost. Or maybe a mixture of both. But one thing that we've talked about in this recover me process is discover me.
Mhm.
And we may discover that some of the things that we lost in 2020 were all for our gain. And we
Yes.
may not
Yes.
realize it. We may not
Hmm.
realize it. So honor the loss, honor the present, honor the future. Dr.
Yes.
Angel, John,
Mm.
got minutes left. Talk to me about those action steps and wrap it up for us.
I just think it's important that we do all three of those things, right? That we really have to make sure that we don't get so stuck on what we lost that we can't move into the future, right? And if we are so stuck in, wait, I lost all these things, we won't be able to move into the future. So really, if we can honor the loss and recognize, okay, this is where I am,
Mhm.
and I am grateful for where I am and what I have now, I'll be able to build for my future. And so I think if we can just take those things and move forward, we'll be able to do really well.
Mhm.
Yeah, I totally agree. I like the way that is all there because it's really all about honoring and acknowledging and celebrating each stage. And there
Mhm.
is celebration at each stage, and Dr. Angel, you put us in mind that, and Dr. Johnson, you as well, as we need to get a little bit more creative with the honoring. We may can't do it the traditional ways,
Mhm.
but we need to find ways to be able to honor what we no longer have, but I like the appreciation of what we do have,
Mhm.
and then how do we then um, enhance that
Mhm.
appreciation to what we still have? Like, how do we connect with those individuals that are still here? Or how do we
Mhm.
Yeah.
connect with those
Yes.
opportunities that are still here? And
Mhm.
then
Yeah.
I just love the piece about the new experiences. Some
Yes.
of us will recover some things or
Mhm.
reattain. Some of us
Mhm.
will attain
Yeah.
some new things.
Mhm.
Some of us will discover. So all of these things are still there, and is an honor for each piece. And
Mhm.
how do we bring that
Mhm.
together, and then how do we pay it forward?
Mhm.
To be able
Yes.
to support
Yes.
other people.
Mhm.
You mentioned something, and I say about men. I'm basically what they would maybe say an introvert. I like to be to
Mhm.
myself and
Mhm.
everything. And I think about that is I don't have the barbershop conversations anymore.
Right.
As you were
Mm.
talking about
Mm.
because of the pandemic, and so what I
Hmm.
would say is that people who are initiators of conversations,
Mhm.
Hmm.
because as an introvert, I am a responder. I just don't
Yeah.
initiate. So
Mhm.
I would say
Yeah.
to some of those individuals is pick up the phone, call
Yes,
your
John.
friends because you are the
Mhm.
initiator. Call your
You have
friends.
initiated.
Hmm.
Yep.
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
sometimes when you initiate that conversation, just the presence of hearing you could help support that person in
Mhm.
Yeah.
realizing that they're not alone in their situation. And then also they just needed that jump start. And then now they'll start speaking about some of the things that they have lost. Some of they might start speaking
Mhm.
on how to celebrate and honor
Mhm.
those three particular areas, but they just needed someone to be that spark.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
I so appreciate you guys tonight. I mean, this is like every time I have people on, I'm like, oh, we need to do this forever,
Yeah, Dr.
have
Angelique.
these conversations, because it's so important to let people know that 2020, and even when I was meditating on what I was going to talk about this season, and this topic came, recovery, recover me, 2021. It's because we're looking for great things in this year. There's no doubt. We're
Mhm.
looking. We need a break, okay? And I'm not
Mhm.
talking about a break
Mhm.
me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar. We need a real break. People are under an enormous amount of stress. And
Yeah.
but we understand that this break is going to come through the recovery process. It's going to come through us understanding where we are, acknowledging the grief, letting go of the pain, honoring the loss, honoring the present, and honoring the future. In this
Mhm.
process, you don't have to do alone. You can do
Mm.
with a family member, a friend. You can do it with us. That's why we're here. You're
Yeah,
doing this.
that's
We
true.
have some people on the Zoom who on this Facebook, not Zoom, who's I'm so used to Zoom, who said,
Mm.
I'm gonna walk with you, Dr. Nicole. We're walking with you this season through
Mm.
this
Mm.
process.
Yes,
If
yes.
I have any walkers,
So good.
just put
It's
in
so
the
good.
chat in our last minute, I'm walking with you. We're
Mm,
Yes.
walking this thing of
Come on.
recovery, you
Come
know?
on. Come
Let's
I
on.
like that.
confess that we're walking
I'm
Yes.
this
walking with you.
thing
Yes.
of recovery
Yes.
together. You might have lost a lot or you might have lost a little,
Mhm.
but I want you to know that the Headshots podcast, that we're here to walk through this recovery
Mhm.
process this year for
Mhm.
you.
My,
We
yes.
are coming out of this grief. We're coming
Yes.
out of this pain. We're not going to be stuck.
Mhm.
We're getting up
Mhm.
and we're going to get
Mhm.
moving. And so we
Yes.
look forward to talking to you the next time. Dr. Angel, Elder
Yeah.
John, thank you so much for
Yes.
being with us
Thank
here on
you.
the Headshots
Thank
podcast.
you.
To our listening audience, we love you and we are going to recover this
Yes,
year
we will.
as never before.
All
And
right.
some of
Yes.
you, we're going to recover ourselves, and we're going to discover the plan that is for our lives.
All
So
right.
for tonight, we
Man.
say good night, God bless you,
Good
and we'll
night.
see you next week. Take
Yes.
care,
God
everybody.
bless. Bye bye.